In this video essay, I'm going to be talking about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. A big Hollywood blockbuster that's full of explosions, fights, guns, classic action film stuff. So it isn't usually regarded as a film worth studying by film scholars and film students and general film buffs. Probably because of the stupid and shitty expositional dialogue like this.
What about the virus, Sally? Any chance of contagion?
We're all genetically immune, or we would have been dead a long time ago.
You don't know that for sure.
Yeah, that's fair enough, but the cinematography in this film really is worthy of note. And I'm not just talking about how pretty it is and how crisp it is, or even how technically impressive it is in the way that they constantly hit eye lines and balance the frame nicely. I'm talking more about the use of cinematic storytelling, communicating with the audience using imagery. For example, in this shot here, it's very easy for us to see who is in charge of the situation. Not because someone told us, but because of staging, positioning, and a camera angle has told us. This use of eyeline and staging to portray hierarchy is prevalent throughout the film, as hierarchy is a crucial theme to the story. In this scene, Reeves communicates to the audience who is in charge of the situation very effectively by placing Caesar at one end of a slope and Koba on the other. We are forced to look up at Caesar, whereas down at Koba, emphasising the hierarchy that's taking place in the story and helping us to understand the position these characters are in. This dynamic of hierarchy is later flipped in the film, and Reeves emphasises this by placing Koba above the other apes when he takes control. In this scene, where Koba is issuing commands, Reeves places him up on the stairwell when the apes down below, putting Koba literally above the other apes, emphasising his position amongst the group as leader and reinforcing that new dynamic shift in hierarchy. Control of staging and eyeline are not the only tools Reeves uses to communicate character traits to the audience. He's also incredibly effective at using lighting to tell us about the characters. Take this shot for example. Yes, they are on a slope again, and yes, Caesar's eyeline is above Koba's, but that's not the only element in play. Lighting also tells us a lot about this story. Caesar has a key light and we can see the details in his face and we can see him properly, whereas Koba is cast in dark shadow and we can't really see him, making us not trust him. Say you'd never seen this film before and you walked into a room playing it, if you'd seen this shot, you would know instantly who is the good guy, who is the bad guy. The use of shadows to emphasise something bad about a character is nothing new. It's done throughout cinema, so much so that we're so used to it as an audience that when we see it, we naturally assume there is something bad about that character. That is why, when Reeves introduces us to the human villain of the film, the first shot we get of him is him silhouetted, completely black. We have never met this character and know nothing about him, but instantly, we as an audience know he is not to be trusted and we do not like him. Contrasted lighting between subject and background is a key element of classical composition. It makes it easy for us to see what needs to be seen in the frame, allowing the director, painter or photographer to draw the viewer's eye to where he needs it to be drawn to. This brings me on to my next point about the cinematography of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Subjectivity. Take this scene for example. This is a genius little shot. In the scene, Malcolm is supposed to feel two things, exposed and vulnerable. So Reeves represents this visually. To make him seem like he sticks out, he makes him stick out. Dark form, light background, strong contrasted lighting makes him easy to see. The vulnerability is then shown in how small he is in frame and how low he is in frame and how surrounded he is by pointy, jaggedy things. This tells us how he's feeling instantly. Without knowing it, we know how he feels. But if you thought that was clever, that's nothing compared to the next scene I'm going to talk about. This scene is an incredible example of how to use compositional elements to further the feelings and vibe of the story you're telling. Here, Malcolm walks out and all eyes are on him. To reinforce this, Reeves needs to make sure that we focus in on him as well. So, he puts him right in the middle of the frame and gives him a light coloured shirt to contrast with the dark background he's against, making him stick out like a sore thumb and us have no choice but to stare right at him. This is done consistently throughout the scene. I mean, look at this frame, it's massive, there's so much going on in it, but your eyes are drawn to one tiny little spot, and that's Malcolm. That's not a coincidence, that's designed. That's clever composition being used to force your eye to go to one part, emphasising the story that's being told. You might think, well yeah, of course those big extravagant shots are going to be well composed. They're huge, they've got to put a lot of work into it. Well okay then, but have a look at this shot then. You might assume it's quite simple and basic because it's only on screen for a couple of seconds and it's not as big and grand as the previous shots we've looked at. But actually, this is an incredible piece of compositional genius. So much so that you have to pause it to really analyse it. Right, so let's analyse this shot. In the scene, everyone is focused on Malcolm and on Caesar. So Reeves needs to make us focus on Malcolm and on Caesar. So how does he do this? Just like in the previous shot, Malcolm's white t-shirt stands him out against his darker background, and Caesar's dark fur stands him out against his lighter background, so they're very easy to see. They are also both placed on the thirds of the frame. Parts of the frame human eyes naturally lean towards, this is where a frame is balanced. If you want to learn more about that, go look up the rule of thirds. It's quite a common thing in composition. So by putting them there, our eyes are naturally more comfortable with resting on those positions. But that's not it. If contrasted lighting and the use of the rule of thirds wasn't enough, there are literally lines being drawn on this frame to make sure you look where Reeves wants you to look. Let's look at Malcolm first. You see that ivy behind him? You see where the edge of the ivy is? Follow the ivy down and it points directly to Malcolm. You see the bus behind him that the monkeys are standing on? Look at the roof. It goes right to his face, drawing two lines that cross where his head is, pulling our eyes to that focus point. Caesar has the same. There were power cables behind his head, literally drawing straight lines to his head to make sure we look there. The buildings in the distance behind him, where do they stop? They draw a line right to his head as well. Even the apes standing on the bus line up in a way that their heads form a line that points, right to Caesar's head. Everything in this frame is pointing your eyes to look at two things, Malcolm or Caesar. You have no choice. There's a lot of stuff going on in frame, there's a lot of detail, a lot of interesting things. There are apes with spears, but you're looking at Malcolm and you're looking at Caesar. This is an incredibly sophisticated image. It has been designed meticulously to force you to look in two places to reinforce the story. That is, you're focused on these two characters. Just like all those apes and just like all the people in the city, you're staring at them. This is a great example of how strong, meticulous composition can really support a storyline and really add to a scene. Imagine how shit the scene would have been if it was just a reverse shot over the shoulder. You wouldn't have got that vibe of being surrounded, you wouldn't have got that vibe of him being little, you wouldn't have been focused in on them, it wouldn't have been the same scene at all, it would have sucked. This shot and this scene and this film are all incredible examples of how to communicate visually with the audience and convey information to them without having to say anything. This genius application of compositional elements is used throughout the film to force us to look where Matt Reeves wants us to look and to force us to feel how Matt Reeves wants us to feel. I do appreciate that this is a big explosion film blockbuster and isn't usually the type of film students are told to go and study or film buffs like to monologue about or analyse, but really I think it should be studied, even if it's on composition alone, because the cinematography of this film really is outstanding. Just ignore the shit dialogue, just forget it, pretend it's not there, and just watch it just for staging, just for lighting, just for eye lines, and just for visual communication, and you will be frankly stunned. I know I was. This is incredibly meticulous in its design. Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it, I hope you got something from it. I'm going to be making a lot more of these. I'm going to be doing essays on Haine, Jaws and This Is England. They're on my list already. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is, because I'm going to be doing this quite a lot. So I hope you like it. Let me know if you want to ask any questions, hit me up. Till then, peace.